So this morning, so I got up this morning. The weather's been amazing the last couple of days here. Very, very little humidity, highs in the low to mid 80s. But in the mornings, it's dropping down into the low 60s, high 50s, which is like that's my jam right there. And so this morning I'm walking, go take the dog for a walk, and the shorts I slept in, they don't have pockets on them. So, he's walking, he's like, "Oh, this is where I'm gonna do my business at." And it's like, all right. So like I put my phone under my arm because I've been listening, I'm listening to to the Sean Ryan show while I'm walking the dog. And so I like tuck it under my armpit, and I got a sweatshirt on, and he does his business. I got a little bag, and so I lean down to grab it, and I grab it, get in a little bag. And as I'm standing up, my arm opens up just enough that my phone tumbles out, but I'm still bent over a little bit.
Oh
And
no.
so my phone goes right into what is left of, his previous night's dinner. It's it was covered in his shit, man. And so I was like, oh no. So I'm picking it up, try not to get it on my hand. It's like, so I'm like pinching it with two fingers, and I'm at the far end of the neighborhood. Like I am at the furthest point from my house that you can be in my neighborhood. And and then I was like, oh man, I dropped the bag, and I would go to pick the bag up, and the bag had landed in the side of it. So now I have it all over, my other hand. And I was like, this is, man, today I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to go back to bed, sleep for about another 30 minutes, and then I'm going to have to get back up and start this day over again. So we went straight back to the house. We didn't finish the walk in the rest of the neighborhood. And so I was like, okay, we're going to go in, and we got to decon some things starting with me. And then we got to decon the phone, and then we got to decon me again. It was not awesome. I got everything cleaned up though. That's what I was telling my wife about it. She just looked at me, and she was like, "What'd you do with your phone case?" I was like, "I, washed it.
I licked it clean.
With, hot soap." But yeah, I was like, it's a little tangy. It's like I washed it in the sink, and it's like it was hot soap and water. Like, it's fine. And she's just like, "I would have thrown it away." I was like, "No." It's like, it's fine. It's what we make soap for, right? I kept telling myself that and all day. Like when I'm picking up my phone, like I pick it up, I'm like, ew. I just kind of set it back down and look at it again. It was the worst.
That's funny, man. That's not a good way to start the day for sure. Holy cow. I similar experience in Iraq, up in Bashar. Was it Bashar where I was? I don't remember the name of that area.
Yeah.
So I was finishing up my business. It wasn't a porta potty. It was a proper, chew restroom type thing.
Yeah.
Chew latrine, and finishing my business. And I don't know how it happened, but that's back when I had an Android. That Android dropped straight into what I had just done.
No.
I don't know how it happened. I to this day, I don't know. I think I just hit it the wrong. It was like sitting on a little shelf, and I think I just tapped it the wrong way. It just dink, in. And I sat there and looked at it for a second. And I was like, because that's my combo, man. That's my combo to everything.
Yeah.
So, I had to do what had to be done, man. I had to reach in there and take it out like the movie Train Spotting. And I had, that was before waterproof phones again. And I had to put that thing in rice, try to wash it off as best I could, put it in rice, and it functioned well enough to get me through the rest of another 3 months or so. But it was bad, man. This is no good. I mean, that's where you got to have your pace plan, man.
That's right.
Your primary alternate. Yeah.
Yep. Pace plans are important. You know why they tell you to put your electronics in rice when they get wet, right?
I always thought it was the rice absorbs the moisture. I don't know.
Well, the rice attracts the Asians who will fix your electronics.
I forgot about that. I was like, is this a joke? Oh, dang. It lures. Oh, pour one out.
Pour one out for Roger. So, for all the Canteeners, listen, Roger is not with us tonight. for this one. But yeah, so if your electronics ever get wet, put them in rice, and Roger will show up and fix them.
Rice or soy? That guy eats more soy than anybody I know.
He does, dude. I've never seen anybody eat that much soy.
Eats a lot of tofu. I
Yeah.
remember when I was in Europe, he was constantly talking about his tofu press and his this and he's that. And I'm like, yeah, just don't. And I tried to get into it, the different flavors and everything. I just never figured out how to do it right.
I did it for a while, and it. I was there for a while. Like, it was one of those things. It worked in the beginning, right? For like the first 3 or 4 months, like I got it down to where I could, bread it up a little bit, throw it in the air fryer, and bring it out and eat it. And it was, it was fine. It was good. But I think my body caught on, and my body was like, no, what are you doing? Because now, like, I can't eat it. Like, if I eat any tofu, like, I will have, I will have the worst gas. And I'm not talking about like, peeling paint off the walls, but dude, I mean, it's like double you over, like, gas buildup with tofu with me. I just can't. I don't know what it is. Now I can't. I can't do it.
So when you were talking about walking your dog, I thought it made me think of the ultra that we've got coming up in late December, early January. For those of you who may remember, I did a 55-hour ultra it starts on December 30th and goes through January 1st. And you just see how far you can go. And another listener, Darren, and I did it. We both knocked out 100 miles in 55 hours. And it was no joke, man. I mean, the whole time, we were saying, why did we do this? How stupid are we? So I shared the experience with Josh, and I don't know if Jared listens or not, but they were like, let's do it. And I was like, okay, so we're going to do it again. And I guess you could say last week and this week are my first 2 weeks of starting to toughen up my feet, just starting that process. Because get it straight. I didn't run one step of that ultra. I walked the whole thing. Darren jogged a little bit, and he ran his last lap, but I didn't. I just walked it, and it was painful enough. So what I learned, a couple of things, and then I'm going to kick it to you, Josh. Like, what's your strategy going to be? Is I think that the feet are important, right? That obviously, all those miles really start to wear and tear. So I think socks, like Lieutenant Dan said, those wool blend socks, probably Patagonia. Probably going to do some Hokas. Also going to do some UFO sandals. Walk a few laps in those every few miles, and just really take care of the feet. I think I'm going to get a pedicure before the ultra to make sure those nails are just as low as they can get. And then just losing a little weight. I was carrying around way too much muscle in that ultra, and I figure if I could just take off about 15 pounds of muscle. And of course, a little fat around the belly, of course, along with that, I think that'll make it a lot easier on my feet. So you even thinking about it? Are you considering it? Are you going to even train for it? Because, I mean, Darren and I really didn't train too much for it. We just showed up and kind of did it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to train for it a little bit. I'm not going to raw dog it. So I've never done an ultra. I've obviously walked a lot, put a lot of miles on this chassis, but never 100 consecutive at once, right? It never like that. So I've started walking a little bit more, just walking. Again, I'm going to be like you. I'm not going to run a step of it. I'm just going to slow, man. I am the tortoise, in this thing. So one of the things I was thinking about, because you're right, you got to take care of your dogs. Your dogs will take care of you. So I'm bringing a couple pairs of shoes, a couple pairs of Hokas, or I'm sorry, a couple pairs of Ultras. And so I've kind of gone from Hokas back to Ultras. And it's for no particular reason. The Ultras, I stayed in Hokas for a while, and but then I couldn't find the Hokas that I really liked. So, but I found a pair of Ultras. I was like, well, I'll try these back on because I was in Ultras before Hokas, and I tried those on, and it was like walking on the moon. And I was like, okay, so these are, I'll go with these. And so I've been, jamming around in those. So I'm going to bring a couple pair of relatively new, Ultras, thick wool socks, like you were saying. I think you're spot on with that. And I think it's going to be one of those. It will kind of, I'll have to. Some of it's going to be discovery learning, right? Because I've never done one, but I'm thinking every time, I stop and I don't know how, whether it's every 10 miles, every 15 miles, whatever, like I'm swapping shoes and swapping socks, right? I mean, it's going to be, I'm going to bring probably a ridiculous amount of, of socks. And every time, stop and be like, okay, we're resting for a while. I'm probably going to swap out socks and, swap over shoes just to try and keep as much squishy foam under my feet as I possibly can. And then, at the end of that, it's, I really haven't thought about, the rest stuff. Again, some of us, it's going to be discovery learning. A lot of it's kind of be, talking to you and kind of what you did will work for you and stuff. Obviously some, some stuff to deal with chafing, for sure. And then, other than that, man, I'm gonna bring a bottle of bourbon, for when it gets really bad. I'll probably be, chomping on, probably be chomping on some 800 milligram Motrin, just to keep everything. I'll probably, before I even start, I'll probably take, 800 milligrams of Motrin before I even start, just to, tame the beast a little bit, at the very beginning. So side note, and I was telling Roger this, last time we were, co-located in the same spot. I was like, dude, before I get on a plane now, without, like, I just do it. I get to the airport, I go ahead and I take a couple of Advil and a Gas X. And dude, especially if it's a long flight, dude, if I'm flying, like to Dallas or, cross country, something like that, bro, Advil and Gas X.
Why Gas X?
Because I can, because I don't know about you, but when I fly, like I get gassy. And so it's like you get up and you're just like, man, I don't, everything's kind of, backed up. And you're just like, man, I feel off. So I take that Gas X. Hey, man, I'm sorry for the folks on the bird with me, but I'm just like, psh, and I don't feel as, I'm not as bloated or, as a nurse described my ankle one time when I busted up, all swole up. That's literally how she described it. She was like, "Oh, your ankle is all swole up." And I was like, "Thank you." Is that a medical term? But that, just I don't know if I don't know how much I'll sleep during the ultra or whatever. I'm gonna pick up those anti-gravity chairs you were talking about. We'll have those there. Maybe rack out for 4 or 5 hours at a time, and not too many times, maybe twice. But the rest of the time, man, I'm just gonna get up and just, dude, again, just slow and steady.
Yeah, I just got to pray for no rain. That's the biggest thing. Like if it's raining, dude, if it's raining, that's going to give me a real big reason to quit. Like it won't be as big a reason for y'all because you've never done it. And you're just like, well, we're here, right. We've come all this way. But with me, I'm going to be like, I already did this, dude, and it sucked when it was dry. So, but hopefully it won't rain. But yeah, I think for me, Darren did it right. Darren stopped once and slept for 3 or 4 hours or something like that. And the tent was so small. Darren's like 6'4", 6'5". He's a big guy. Damn. And the one-man tents were tiny, and he was just miserable in that thing. So he was like, I'm not stopping in that tent again. So he just gutted the rest of the way through. Nice. With me, I'd like to try to do something similar because, yeah, I'd like to try to do something similar. I ended up sleeping probably close to 8 to 10 hours total, maybe even more. I stopped once and thought I was getting sick. Like I thought I was getting the flu. I think that was my body doing something. I was like, if I am getting the flu, I'm really not be able to finish because I was like 65 miles in at that point. So yeah, it's just a gut check. That's all it is. And they have a little aid station there. They got plenty of food. My goal is to drink more beer than Darren did. That's going to require discipline because Darren, I think, had 31 or 32. 12-ounce beers. And
holy cow.
yeah, I think I can beat that. It's just, you just got to be disciplined about it. You got to be disciplined about your beer drinking. You've got to force those things down, because for Darren, a lot of it was a little bit of pain management. You take 3 or 4 Advil, some Motrin, this is Aleve, and you wash that down with, Coors Light. And he was very disciplined. I think it was 5 miles or so, he'd stop. And so, yeah, I've got to beat Darren on that, hopefully. But yeah, so it'll be fun. We'll see. I'll purposely not listen to a bunch of podcasts. So when it starts getting really boring after mile 50, just put on some, Sean Ryan and Joe Rogan. So I hate doing this, Josh, where we talk about another person's podcast on our podcast. But that Navy captain, what's his name?
Brad Geary.
Yeah, Captain Geary.
Captain Geary. Yeah.
He was on, and we don't need to tell his whole backstory or anything, but he was on the Sean Ryan show, and you brought this up. You said, man, I really like what he said about risk. So do you still recall kind of the idea of what he said? Because if you do, explain it, because I was having a hard time articulating that even in my own mind today. So I was hoping you could give the high points, because I thought it was really good too.
So the way he talked about risk, because we've always talked about we are mitigating risk, right? We identify risk throughout the risk management cycle, and that we mitigate it. And it's like, and he broke down, and he was like, I don't like the term mitigate risk, because you're not mitigating risk. You're transferring the risk, right? You're moving that risk somewhere else. Because he talked about, they were doing, they were getting ready, they were planning an op. And one of the things is right, so they're doing a halo into the Indian Ocean. And this all started when, he's on a carrier, they're on a float, and they had haloed in with their 8 sacks, into the ocean, and then went and met up with this carrier. And he was, his friend, one of his classmates from the academy or whatever was on there, and it was a Hornet pilot, and he was showing him his, aircraft, and he jumps the 4 feet to the ground, and his buddy pilot, pilot's like, oh my God, dude, you can't do that. Everybody right now, everybody's up in the conning tower, watching you, and they're just, they're clutching their pearls, because that was dangerous, that was very risky. And he's like, I jumped 4 feet to the ground, and he's like, well, yeah, that's high risk. And he's like, did you see me jump into the ocean from 30,000 feet? That's high risk, right? Jumping 4 feet to the deck off your, that's not high risk. So they got in this conversation about risk and what we do with it. And the example he used, they put apparently, and I haven't been to Buds, obviously. So in Buds, apparently there's a slide for life, to where, candidates have to crawl out on this rope. And it's one of those, by the time you get to the point where they stop you, you got to hang. So, they have the same thing at Ranger School, they say, hey, your forearms are done by that point. But it's one of those things, they say, if you fall early from that, it's going to be catastrophic, in the sense, or you are going to get injured if you fall prior to that. And so they put a net. They hadn't had any issues with anybody falling, since they started basic underwater demolition school in Coronado, since I think it started in the 40s, I believe. They hadn't had, maybe, you could count on one hand the number of students that fell prior to them installing this net. And so he was the commander of the training school there, whatever they call it, their academy, right, for Buds. And they said after they installed the net, they had students falling. And so they were like, why are people falling now? We didn't have this problem before they installed the net. And they were like, well, the net was risk, because people talk about, well, we put that in to mitigate risk. And so he sat down and he explained it to him. It's like, you're not mitigating that risk, because now people aren't pushing themselves past the point of where they think they can go. Here in training, here, in school, we're assessing them. Can they do what we're asking them to do out in the force, after they graduate, get their Budweiser, get their bird, whatever they, try to, whichever term you want to call it, take the net out. And once they took the net out, people stopped falling. Because people, it's like, okay, well, hey, well, I can fall now because I have a net under me, right? People looked at that as they were quote unquote mitigating risk. He said, no, you're not doing that. You're transferring the risk. You're moving that risk from here for us to identify it and say this person, doesn't belong in this profession. They can't, or can't do this. And now when, they realize that that person's out in the force, they could be on a mission, overseas somewhere, and it could be catastrophic, all because we decided we were going to try and quote unquote mitigate risk with a net. And so the way he looks at risk is you transfer it, you identify it and you transfer it, or you accept it. Right. And high risk. And he's not right. He's not a reckless guy, but he was explaining, he was like high risk. He goes, people don't want to do things. Commanders don't want to sign off on things that are quote unquote high risk because risky. He's like, but look at what we're being asked to do. He's like, we are doing things that are incredibly high risk. Whether it's, jumping out of a C-17 at, 25, 30,000 feet, behind a boat that you just dropped, you're going to hit the ocean, climb up into this boat, then you're going to go somewhere, right? You're not, it's high risk going and doing a beach recce in denied areas. It's high risk going overseas as a singleton, doing a military operation in a clandestine manner. He's like, that's what we train people for. That's what we select, and train people for. He's like, people have to get out of the mindset of we can't do risky things because that's exactly what we should be doing. And that's what we were selected and trained to do. The way he talked about managing risk and accepting risk versus mitigating risk, it made me change my mind on how we view risk, and the terminology and kind of how we frame it. It was the guys, and he's very articulate. He was a great speaker. It was a great episode. I watched it all the way through. I thought it was really, really good, and I highly recommend anybody else, everybody else go check it out.
Yeah, it is interesting. It was super interesting. So you identify the risk, you acknowledge the risk,
yep.
And from there you either accept or transfer, and then you manage the risk. So it's a different way of looking at risk assessments, risk. It's so ingrained in us to say mitigation. I'm in a job right now where all they talk about is risk mitigation, and boy, you can't mitigate it all. I always tell them the thing. It's a sliding scale, right, between security and operations, right?
Yep.
If you are all the way on the right, you're all the way secure on that scale. You're in the green. Well, then you can't operate at all because you're locked up in a basement, with 3 squares a day and all that stuff. But if you're all the way to the left on the operational side with no security or safety, you may operate once, right? Depending on the environment. That's, I always try to explain that, but I may take some of those lessons I guess we learned from that particular podcast, maybe try to apply that, but I think it'll fall on deaf ears because, identifying risk in the corporate world is a totally different. First of all, they all think that risk means money. When they say yes, we've got risk here, it's like that means they're talking about dollars lost. So it's like, well, we're not talking about that. We're actually talking about physical security here. Oh, okay. So then they start thinking about that in the same way they think about identifying risk, as in losing money. It's really bizarre. It's very bizarre. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a fascinating story. After you get done listening to all of our podcasts twice, so go over to Sean Ryan and listen to Brad Gary's interview. It's a long one. Really sheds a lot of light on BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition School in Coronado Island, and it's just very interesting, man. Some guys out there are just very impressive dudes, man. Very impressive dudes. When Tom Satterley, who is on the Sean Ryan show, when he's not even really a standout, that Sean Ryan is bringing in some super squared away dudes. But yeah, it was really good, man. And so do you want to, I'll bring it up first. I saw the other day, yesterday, actually. I think it was, that Sean Ryan posted something on his X about he was on a flight to Las Vegas, and it was like the charting the flight path, right?
Yeah.
And he said something like, "Let LFG, you know, let's go." And I was like, "Huh, I think Trump's up in that area." And it occurred to me, I was like, I wonder if he's gonna do something with Trump, because he never really talks about politics. Not really. You know, he definitely leans more toward the conservative side, but he has some of those RFK Jr. leanings, you know, some of those Joe Rogan leanings, like everybody's messed up. It's all one big swamp. So that kind of stopped me from thinking he's going to interview Trump. And then lo and behold, man, he posts out of him actually interviewing, and that thing's going to drop soon, man. What a champ, man. Dude, what a legend.
Dude, I cannot wait for that one, because and I like Joe Rogan, and I think Joe Rogan is, when it comes to interviewing people, Joe Rogan doesn't care who you are. He's going to ask you questions. He's going to ask you hard questions, and he's not going to, Joe Rogan's not going to pull any punches. And so, I was a big fan of, like, hey man, I love how Rogan does his podcast. And I think Rogan's a good interviewer, until I saw Sean Ryan. I think Sean Ryan is probably one of the best interviewers I've ever seen. Just the way he doesn't talk over folks. He doesn't interrupt folks. He doesn't ask too many questions. And even some of the questions he asks are all, they're all open-ended, but they're not, he's not, it's the way you ask him is, you want to talk about that? Okay. And then, he lets a person go, and they go for, 10, 15 minutes without him saying another word. And it's really, really good. And I like how he set up his studio and everything. He had, I don't know, I think, did you watch the one with Masood's son?
Yes.
Fantastic. Listen to his son. I right after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which we're right in the midst of the anniversary of, Masood's son was a little bit on, he was on Twitter a little bit, or X. And, it was like, hey man, like, dude, this guy is not his dad. Right. He is milk. He is milk toast, version of his dad. And, but listening to him on the Sean Ryan podcast, you can tell he's got some of his dad's qualities in him, but I think he's more of a politician than his dad was. His dad was that guy was a straight fighter, straight gangster. I think Masood's a little bit more of a politician than his dad was, but it was really good, especially when he's talking about all the groups that are operating in Afghanistan now, all the terrorist organizations, and then how much money we give we give the Taliban these days, and everything, even though they're still Americans that are stuck there. He was really good. I watched the one with Eddie Gallagher. And, for those who, may have forgotten who Eddie Gallagher was, Eddie Gallagher is probably the most infamous SEAL in the last, 10 years. Who, he was charged with killing, a wounded ISIS fighter, later to be found not guilty when another SEAL took the stand for the prosecution, and then was like, oh yeah, no, he didn't do that, dude. I did it. I'm the one who killed him. But he had some immunity deal. And so they could, they were like, oh, okay. But Eddie Gallagher lays it out. He'd never really been able to tell his story. He told on Sean, and he's been on a couple other podcasts, but when he laid it out, and he's coming out, his book is getting ready to come out. And the cool thing about his book, it's everything. You always, when you're listening to people tell their story, especially in that situation, you're like, okay, well, this is his side of it. Right. There's always two sides to every story. And the truth is, generally somewhere in the middle. But like when he's telling this story, you start listening to him and you're like, dude, no, this is insane. How they're railroading him is absolutely insane. And he was talking about in his book, he included QR codes throughout his book. So when he's talking about something in the book, and he says, hey, two of the SEALs that lied about me came to visit me in prison and said, hey man, yeah, we're lying, we're really sorry, blah blah. He was like, he included the QR code that will link you to the sign-in roster at, of the place he was in. So you scan the QR code, that evidence comes up. The video, the helmet cam from the medic, when everybody was like, yeah, dude, he just ran up and started wailing on this guy with his K-bar. Hey, QR code, there's the helmet cam from the medic, which shows him doing everything but what they said he did. Right. And so he put that throughout his book, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that could be the new annotation style,
Yeah.
I can't remember. He Strunk and White, I know, but I can't remember that method they taught us in college. It was so valuable, where you annotate all your citations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have my copy still have it in my desk.
Yeah, I have it. It's right up on my shelf there. It's called something. Anyway. Yeah, I'll have to listen to Eddie Gallagher one. Same thing with Gary, right? He,
Yep.
Again, like you said, truth's right there in the middle somewhere. I tend to think that Captain Gary is probably being very truthful. I'm not saying he's lying about anything, but there's always two sides to every story.
Sure.
But when he talks about, and I'm sure Gallagher's the same way, when they talk about when the command gets it in their head that you're wrong, the military can sure as hell railroad the piss out of you. I mean, there was a couple times in my career where I was on the verge of getting railroaded. Fortunately, the evidence was so overwhelming. But I told you all the story. I told it on this podcast of them doing an investigation behind my back for, 5 months before I even knew what was going on. And they were trying to railroad me, trying to keep something embarrassing from coming out. It's just it. So I really sympathize. I can say sympathize with that. And from what I understand, the Navy's even worse than the Army.
Yeah,
which I can't even imagine that. And I'll tell you what Sean Ryan's doing for me, though. He's kind of killing two birds with one stone, in that I have never had a high opinion of of CIA personnel, especially GRS and Navy SEALs. But he's changing my mind, and so are some of the folks coming on his podcast, because, man, those two Naval Special Warfare officers, Gallagher and Gary, well, I haven't listened to Gallagher's yet, but I assume he's the same, are very intelligent. I mean, very intelligent. It's like, it's impressive. So yeah, I'm impressed, man. I'll tell you, with Joe Rogan, I've kind of been losing interest. It's kind of getting a little stale to me. There's some I still have on my list to listen to, but it's kind of the same thing every time. You can count on Joe Rogan at some point in every podcast to mention two or more of the following things: DMT, aliens, Bigfoot, TRT, cold plunge, sauna, comedy, or martial arts. It's like every single time. And a lot of times what he's been doing lately is he starts bringing, and this is where Sean Ryan is so refreshing, is he starts bringing the conversation to himself. It's like, Joe Rogan, I've been listening to you now for like 7 years, dude. I know who you are. I know how you feel about these things. Let the guest talk. And I know what he's trying to do for comedy, and I respect it, and I'm not knocking him. It's just, but it's not my bag. I don't want to listen, out of every 5 podcasts, 3 of them are comedians. And it's just like, they all kind of sound the same to me. He's just got to realize, man, dude, he's fine. He's still the #1 audience in the world, but there are people coming up behind him, who are looking to fill a void of people who are getting tired of that. Sean Ryan's one of those, although his audience is definitely going to be not as big as Joe Rogan's. Not quite as big. I don't think it ever will be, unless he starts to branch out and do more of these Donald Trump and, Tucker Carlson type interviews. But I'm looking forward to the one with Trump. But I also saw a bunch of clips, I haven't watched it yet, of Theo Vaughn. He's a comedian. Theo Vaughn? Yeah. So he interviewed Trump. And I watched a 9-minute clip of that where Theo Vaughn had to explain to Trump what alcoholism is like, what being addicted to pills is like. It wasn't because Theo Vaughn wanted to explain it. It's because Trump was asking him questions about it. Like, he was genuinely concerned. Because he was explaining about his brother, Fred, I think Fred Trump, was an alcoholic, this big smoker. And Trump was saying, I've just never done it, and Theo Vaughn was saying, well, I struggle with it. And Trump was asking him, like, it turned into Trump asking the questions. It was like, wow, okay. Interesting, right? This is very, very interesting. I don't know, man. I think I want to jump right into it, but there's some news, I think, probably the main reason we're recording tonight. Let's talk about the DNC first. Let's talk about the convention. There's not too much to say about it, but I thought the cheapest trick in the book, and I'll kick it back to you, the cheapest trick in the book was them spreading the rumor that Beyonce was going to come on the last night of the convention, and then letting rumors flow that Taylor Swift was going to appear at the convention. And surprise, surprise, the honored guest was Leon Panetta. What? It's quite a step down from Beyonce. And I think they started that rumor, Josh, to keep people watching.
Yeah. So I didn't watch the first minute of the DNC. I didn't watch any of it. The only clips I saw on it were on social media. And even on those clips, I didn't watch them for honestly more than a minute because it's so tiresome. It's so loathsome because they did not have, people will be like, oh, well, they had Leon Panetta on there, and maybe one other. They didn't have anybody on there who genuinely disagreed with them. They didn't have anybody on there who was not, on there to lick their boots. I'll give the RNC this. They had now I forget his name, the union guy, right, head of the Teamsters. They're on there, and that dude flat out told him at the beginning, he's like, "I'm not endorsing you. I'm not endorsing. We're not endorsing anybody right now." And Leon Panetta, I didn't watch it, but I bet Leon Panetta came out there and licked those boots. I can almost guarantee it. And so it's the same thing, right? A couple months ago, they were the Democrats were openly talking about, we have a Kamala problem. Like, how do we get rid of Kamala? And 60 days later, she's the second coming. And so it's just the DNC, again, man, I didn't watch a minute of it. I could not care less about it. So I really don't have a whole lot to say on it. I did see the stuff talking about Beyonce and Taylor Swift and then Leon Panetta. Like, you got a bunch of young folks all excited to see Beyonce or Tay-Tay. And then what do they get? Leon Panetta. Man.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed in the protesters too, man. They just don't, they didn't have that 1960 energy or even that 2020 energy.
Yeah.
I was kind of weak sauce. The whole thing, I watched it every night. I didn't watch every moment of every night, but I had it on in the background as I was cooking or doing whatever. And I did it because I want to hear what they had to say. Even though I know it's all going to be BS, I want to see what the narrative, what are they trying to form here? What's the angle? Know thy enemy, right? And yeah, they went real heavy America with it. There's a lot of red, white, and blue, a lot of flag waving, a lot of no more going back. I think one of the most fascinating things they did by Thursday night was make Donald Trump the incumbent. It's like the last 4 years didn't even happen. It's very, very interesting what they're trying to do. There wasn't anybody on there that was a varying opinion. They're all bootlickers. Like you said, you had the Teamsters Union president. You had Tucker Carlson, who will trash those guys, that group, as much as he does the Democrats. A lot of times he trashes them more, but yet he's still up there. And I think that's because, personally, first of all, Marxists will do, which because that's what the Liberal Party is now, Democrat Party, Liberal Party for the most part. They're authoritarians who use Marxist, corporatist authoritarians who use Marxist tactics, Marxist strategies, and it's all about winning for them. And if it's all about winning, everything is about winning. You can do whatever you want. That does not allow any room for intellectual or moral honesty at all. There are no convictions other than winning. So I think with conservatives at the RNC, and of course I'm biased, take it with a grain of salt, but there is a little bit more intellectual and moral honesty with that. There are more convictions. But they do realize winning is important. So they go up there and acknowledge, hey, I don't agree with everything. Even Nikki Haley said it. You don't have to agree with Trump all the time, but it's important we win. Whereas the Democrats is like, no, I agree with everything. And I think that this move today by Trump and RFK Jr., by the time this episode comes out, everyone will have a weekend to digest it. But I think it was a genius move. And the only way, I'm going to continue to say it, the only way we're going to win this is if there's low turnout on the Democrat side, number one. That's number one. Number two, high or higher than normal turnout on the Republican side. And hopefully those two things combined together will override the hijinks that are going to happen, because there will be hijinks, just like last time. There'll be hijinks. And we just got to keep making these moves to transcend the media gaslighting. That's the only way. Because all of this, you said it, Josh, like now she's the second coming of Obama. Whereas 2 months ago, we have a Kamala problem. This is all gaslighting. That's got to be transcended. And I felt myself, I don't know about you, Josh, but I felt myself for the past couple of weeks kind of getting down. I was like, oh, dude, this is not good. I'm not feeling the energy. And today kind of pretty much changed that for me. Like, I'm not like, we're going to win, but I'm like, I see a little hope, a little bit of hope here.
Yeah, I've been the same way the last couple of weeks. I've been pretty black pilled, and a lot of it has to do with every time you turn around, the RNC and the GOP, they let you down at every turn. I I made the post, from our account. It's like, when I die, I want the GOP to be my pallbearers so they can let me down one last time. Because every time we turn around, you're just they're losing over stupid stuff, like absolutely stupid stuff. And that's why I made it a point every time I can jump in early on like a Jim Jordan post when Jim Jordan's complaining about something in the government. I'm like, man, if only you could get elected to Congress and do something about it. When Mike Johnson's like, the border, God, the border's just wide open. It's like, man, only if only you could get elected to Congress and become Speaker of the House, maybe you could do something about it. The GOP had the ability to do something about that. They could have not passed the budget. They could have said, no, we're holding on to the purse until we get what we need to secure the border, and so be it. But oh well, it's election year. We don't want any bad press. It's like, oh, okay, well, no, go ahead and give them that, because now. The left has been, and they've been riding this, for the last couple months. They're like lowest border numbers, even, when Trump was in office. It was like, but you don't get to take credit for trying to put out the fire that you started. That's not how this works. You can't leave the border open for 3 years. And then, in the last couple of months, lock it down and say, see how good it is. It's wild. And then they're turning around, and Kamala keeps talking about all these problems. We're going to fix this. We're going to fix that. It's like, you are the second most powerful person in the free world right now. Why aren't you fixing them? Why aren't you fixing them? And nobody's asking this question. The hell is Joe Biden? That guy still has the nuclear codes, by the way. Everybody's tracking that, right? Like, that guy still got the football. That guy, he doesn't know what day it is. He probably doesn't know what month it is, and so we keep turning around, and like you said, they're like, oh, Kamala's going to fix all these problems. Kamala's, and it's like, she's currently in office, people. And who was it? One of y'all said it. I can't remember if it was you or Roger in our chat. It's like, you go back and look, and this is another thing that people, aren't talking about, and they don't look at. 12 of the last 14 years, or 12 of the last 16 years, we have had a Democratic president. Go back and look and see how many of those years Democrats controlled both chambers and the White House. So if they want to talk about all these problems and all these systemic problems, you might want to go take a look in the mirror.
Yeah, it wasn't all Trump. You can't pin it
No.
on basically 3 years. Well, you can pin some stuff on him because the way he handled COVID, I just still don't agree with to this day. I like to think he maybe took some lessons away from that, but can't pin it all on Trump. All these millennials and Gen Z are starting to panic because it's going to be really hard to buy a house. Like we've been saying for years, we're like, we are coming up on this. This is going to happen. They are going to have a lower quality of life than we did. They're going to have to work harder for the same quality of life that we had and have. That's a fact. I'd like to see somebody prove to me on paper that I wasn't right on that one. I mean, I just don't see it unless the economy completely turns around in the next 4 years. I don't see how I'm wrong on that. But yeah, I mean, where do I want to go with this? We've been saying for a few weeks now that it's like, man, we've really got to get in the saddle because there's not that much time to the election. Right now there's 70 something days, 72 days or 74, something like that. It's like, man, in this modern world that we live in, the information flows so fast. That's an eternity. That's a very long time. Legally speaking, as far as like getting your name on a ballot and stuff like that, that's different, of course. But information wise, narrative wise, that's an eternity. And the Harris Walz campaign is not going to be able to run on vibes for another 74 days. People are going to start seeing through it. I think people already are seeing through it. They're starting to ask questions. Bringing out price controls. Did we talk about that last episode? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Proposing price controls and things like that. I think people are starting to see through it. And what happened today, I'll just go ahead and say it. So today, Friday, August 23rd, as we're recording, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dropped out, or he suspended his campaign and endorsed Donald Trump. He did a long speech. I listened to the whole thing. It's pretty good speech, pretty honest. He absolutely murdered, desecrated, then peed on the dead corpse of the Democrat Party. It was a brutal takedown. It was. You should listen to it, Josh, if you haven't heard it. It's crazy.
I haven't heard it.
So I guess things are getting pretty serious when a member of the Kennedy family endorses a Republican. That's the world we live in. I've said this earlier about RFK. I do think he's an opportunist. I probably disagree with 50% of everything he has to say, which is a lot. You disagree with 50% of what people have to say. It's a lot. But the 50% I agree with him on is a pretty important 50%. RFK Jr. said that Trump had not offered him, but they had spoken about RFK Jr. having a position within the Trump cabinet. I personally think that will probably be the FDA, or maybe Health and Human Services probably would be where he's best served, is Health and Human Services. You're talking in some states, Josh, you're talking up to 6% in some states. And here's what RFK Jr. did. He pulled his name off ballot. He did not pull his name off some state ballots, states where it's not going to matter whether he's on the ballot or not. In all the swing states and battleground states, he left his name on the ballot.
Yeah.
So how do you think that's going to go? We kind of chatted about that earlier, but you're talking anywhere from 3 to 6% in some of these states. Those are going somewhere now.
How that's going to work out, I don't know. Because whoever the undecideds are right now, I don't know what event. Maybe they're waiting on the debate to see how the debate between Kamala Harris and and DJT go. To decide. Because CNN interviewed some undecideds last night, and I saw the clip today. They were undecided prior to the DNC, and then they were, they interviewed them then, and they were like, "Yeah, we really want to see what they have to say," blah blah. And then they turned around and they were, from Chicago, so it's a smattering of minorities, in the little group, and dude, they interviewed him after the DNC, and one of the guys is like, he goes, yeah, he goes, I listened to Kamala's speech. He goes, yeah, there was some energy there. He goes, but she didn't say anything. He was like, basically, he said it was a word salad. She didn't say she did not convince me to vote for her. And he's like, and Donald Trump hasn't convinced me to vote for him. Now, is that guy going to go, pull the lever for RFK? Probably not. But I don't know how that's going to work out in the states that he doesn't have his name on the ballot, in the states that he does have his name on the ballot. I did see where Trump had talked to they were talking about RFK being in the Trump administration, and somebody was like, well, he was going to put him in charge of the CIA, right? He was going to make him the CIA director, and I mean, they killed his uncle, so. Yeah,
well,
that would be kind of interesting
if they announce that. If they announce that, like that's a meme in the making.
Oh,
like Trump.
Yeah,
I'm going to make RFK the CIA director, and then the bottom part of the meme is, do you want to get killed? Because that's how you get killed. You want to because dude. Did
you see the Babylon Bee headline?
Yeah, it was a good one.
About RFK, it was one of the best. For those of you who hadn't seen it, it said Trump adds a Kennedy and hopes he will draw all the sniper fire.
Brutal.
It was a good headline, man. That was a good one. And then, of course, there's people, like, oh, it's so inappropriate. But it's like, really? It's 2024, and you think that's so that's inappropriate? Okay, all right.
I think that move today was, and then RFK Jr. also appeared with Trump at a rally in Nevada. Was it back in Arizona, or is in Arizona?
Yeah, somewhere out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So he appeared at a rally, and why this is such a decent move is it really took the spotlight off the DNC. I don't think Harris gets any kind of bump. I don't believe the polls anyway. Try to read between the lines on the polls, but now that RFK is off the rolls, I look at specifically at Arizona. There's probably a lot of Jill Stein type people in Arizona, and I think if they had decided on RFK, now he's out, they're just, well, I cannot vote for Trump. I think I could see a lot of people going for Jill Stein in some of these states. I think is a good move. I think that I think the next person to come out and really throw their weight behind Trump is going to be Tulsi Gabbard. I see that happening within the next week. I think she'll come out and maybe angle for a spot in his administration as well. I think I can possibly see, I'm like you though, man, I can possibly see the momentum building, but I'm just waiting for the GOP and the Republican National Committee to step on its crank and just ruin it, or Trump say something stupid or do something stupid. The October surprise. Let's do October surprise predictions. I'm going to predict, and this is a bold one, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm going to predict the October surprise is going to be Tim Walz pulled a Jerry Sandusky on a kid or physically abused someone. Because did you see the video clip of him and his? Yeah.
When he jerked his son's arm and the face he made when he did it, like that wasn't like, no, hey, no, we got to go this way. It was jerked his, and you could see him grimace. Like there was anger in that. And you're like, ooh. And did you see, I'm assuming his sister like immediately run over to him and be like, hey, she went over and grabbed Tim Walz's son, her brother. It was like, oh yeah. Like dad's mad. Like dad's upset. Dad's going to hit you again. No, I 100% agree with that. I absolutely 100% agree with that. And while we're talking about Tim Walz's son, like, so real quick, but here's before I go into something else that's on the ballot in 9 states that's going to draw voters to the polls. The DNC thrust Tim Walz's son into the spotlight with a picture of him, crying. And, I've generally been, hey, kids, even with Obama's daughters, Bush's daughters, and it's like, hey, kids, leave the kids alone. Even with Chelsea Clinton, it's like, leave the kids alone. And then the Democrats come out and are like, I can't believe they're making fun of Tim Walz's son. I can't believe, this, that, and the other. It's like, Well, no, when you guys did that to, and I think it was, you might have posted it, Trig Palin, and it was like, hey, it's like, because he's special needs, like, don't, like, really? Like, don't mess with that kid. Don't mess with the kid. Even with Obama's kids, it's like, leave the kids out of it. Like, really? But with Trig Palin, they were like, oh, no. And then with Barron Trump, right? You saw how much hate Barron Trump got. And, some of those other kids, who wound up
George W. Bush's kids.
Yeah, his daughters, but really, like, when Nick Salmon got, canceled, by all the media outlets and the Washington Post, and they wound up having to pay him a couple $100 million, for, everything. And then they want to turn around and be like, I can't believe you guys made fun and went after Tim Walz's son. And it just kind of goes back to, hey, we told you about the rules and you chose to make new rules, and we told you wouldn't like those. So welcome to the new rules. Here's something some people aren't talking about. Well, a lot of people aren't talking about when we talk about, right? So the DNCs, we think they're worried about voter turnout. Well, that may be because, I don't know how many people are getting excited, to go vote for Kamala. And I don't know how many people are getting excited to go vote for Donald Trump. Because there are those folks out there. But there's 9 states that abortion is on the ballot for the state, and whether they're going to allow it or not, or what we cut off, whatever, right? But there's abortion on the ballot in 9 states. That is going to get people to the polls, whether even if they're like, I'm not excited to go vote for either one of those candidates, but I'm probably excited to go vote for this one way or the other, right? And those states are Arizona, battleground, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New York, South Dakota. Right. So, I don't see Missouri all of a sudden turning blue. But when you start talking those battleground states, especially like Arizona, that's going to get those blue hair cat moms, out to the polls, and it's going to get some people out to the polls who, again, they might not have planned on going to go vote for, either one of the presidential candidates, but they're going to turn around and be like, well, I want to go vote for that. And while I'm there, I might as well fill in some bubbles. So, that's got to factor that into the gonculator as well, kind of thinking about who's, turnout wise. But make no mistake, Republicans need turnout in this one. They need turnout like nobody's business. And if they get the turnout and they win, and Donald Trump does not give Scott Presler a position in his administration, it will be a damn Greek tragedy.
You're right. During the Kennedy speech, Presler was on X appealing to anyone in Pennsylvania who is an RFK worker. He's like, DM me. I want your voice in all this. And it's like, that was during RFK's speech. And it's like, man, dude, this kid's going to be a superstar. He's going to be the next David Axelrod, Karl Rove type guy. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. But we need more people like that. Young folks full of energy, getting out there and doing stuff on our side. Because the Democrats have had that for 60 years. They've been outperforming Republicans on that one.
They know how to do grassroots.
They do. And yeah, I don't know. The states you mentioned, I think Arizona could be consequential for sure with respect to that. Arizona is just a weird one anyway. It's such an outlier in so many ways. One of the things, Josh, it was a main feature of the DNC was abortion. It was just all abortion all the time.
Didn't they have like a truck, like an abortion truck in the parking lot?
Yeah.
How demonic is that?
You could go get a vasectomy or, basically abortion pills just right outside. And apparently they were full up the entire time. They were completely booked up. And it's like, which I am not against contraception, by the way. I'm not Catholic. I'm not against contraception.
Me neither.
But I don't I don't understand well, it's because I'm a man, obviously, but I want to wade too far into the abortion unless you want to. But the old Bill Clinton thing, safe, legal, and rare, right? Safe,
Yeah.
legal, but rare. Uh, it's not necessarily I can get behind that, but that's what makes the most sense. And what makes the most sense about it is the rare part of it, where it's not like a sacrament that you do. It's demonic is a good word. Is a good word. It's demonic, the obsession with abortion. I mean, why are you obsessed with it? It's like as a species, I don't know if you've heard me go off on what our prime movers are as species. It's survival and propagation. And some biologists would put propagation as the prime driver over survival. They would say
Yep.
you want to survive so that you can propagate. I don't want to get into the brain class right now, but it's very funny, folks. If you see somebody who's extremely nervous, a lot of times they'll cover their genitals if they're standing up or sitting down. They'll put their hands right over their genitals. That is your reptilian brain telling you, protect what propagates the species. And as a species that's obsessed with removing a potential member of the species, if there's not a health problem with it, man, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around, man. Just a sign of the times, I guess.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm not against contraception, and I'm not even against abortion. When when it comes down to like, hey, man, it's the baby or the mom,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I completely get that, and even in cases of rape and incest, like, hey, I get it, right? I get it, but just like you said, like a lot of the people on the left, they're like their obsession with it. There's one, you know, person on X. I don't know who it was, and I don't know who it was. She's like, I've had 37 abortions, and she was proud of it. Like she was proud of it, and it was just like, what in the hell is wrong with you? Like that is not from a mental standpoint. That is not mentally okay, right? That person is in a mental crisis.
Our cerebrums have
And
gotten out of control, man. That's the problem. Our cerebrums are overriding like basic survival and propagation instincts. We're overthinking it. In other words, it's like this stuff is encoded. Whether you want to call it God or Darwin or whatever you want to call it, these things are encoded, and we're going against it. Like, you ever seen a dog that just given birth to litter like 9 puppies, and one of the puppies, the dog will take it away from the rest of the
yeah,
litter and leave it alone. And it's
yep,
like you talk to people who don't know anything about animals, and they're like, oh, and they'll try to take that dog back and put it in the litter. It's like, no, that mama dog knows that dog is going to die very soon.
yep,
And it's not going to take the risk of spreading or whatever, anything. It's not going to take any milk away from the other 8 puppies. This
yep,
one's gone. That's a survival thing. So when you say life of the mother or the life, I absolutely go with the mother. You go with the mother on
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Why? Why do you go with the mother? Because the mother may have more babies. That's why.
right,
The mother may have more babies. That baby may not survive. But we've got a, naturally speaking, we've got a viable reproducing organism right here. You have to save that one. You have to save that one. It's all numbers, man. I'm very much of a naturalist when it comes to this stuff. And the
yeah,
abortion thing, I think we agree. I don't know if there's need to belabor it anymore. It's just we're overthinking it. We've got too much time to sit around and belly gaze and think about what's good for us as a
yeah.
species. For the most part, at least in the Western world.
Well, yeah, and that's part of our problem is that the Western world, has been living, high on the hog for a very long time. And, we have the luxury of sitting around and saying, you know what? You're going to call me Z today because I've decided that's how I want to be identified. You know what? Somebody your age in the Ivory Coast is doing today? They're trying not to die. They're trying not to die from everything that wants to kill them, including their neighbors, the water source that they're drinking out of, you know, the, the saltwater crocodiles at their water source. They're just trying not to die. And you're sitting over here at Starbucks, big mad because someone misgendered you. The Western world is, again, and I've said it on here before, and I'll say it, I'll say it again. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I really don't, because being uncomfortable sucks. I've been uncomfortable before. You have, a lot of folks who listen to us have, and I don't want to have to do it again. But if it meant that we could reset everything and take it back to, like 1989, it'd be like, you have to be uncomfortable for the next 5 years. Like, you have to go without, you've got to go without your little frother for your half and half for your coffee. And you got to go without this, that, and the other for 5 years. And everything gets reset and people get back on, a somewhat more normal track. I'd be like, done, deal. Let's suffer. Cause I'm what they call old poor. I could be poor again. And so we've gotten, life has been too good. People have forgotten what, it's like, hey man, I don't have time to sit here and argue about these trivial things. Like, I have to go make some money today or we're not going to eat.
The trick is with that reset thing in the 5 years, the trick is if it happens, when it happens, you won't know that it's going to be better in 5 years.
It's true.
That's the trick. And unfortunately, I mean, we may be heading toward that. But like you said, it's like old poor. Yeah, I could do it again. Do I want to? No. Would life be more simple though? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a funny one the other day. I've always wondered, you've seen the Lord of the Rings movies, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the first Lord of the Rings movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, right? The first 30 minutes of that movie was basically Gandalf showing up to the little hobbit village and them just having fun and talking. It's very peaceful. It's very relaxed. And I always wondered why that resonated with me way back in like my 30s, my early 30s, I think is when it came out, I think. But I always wonder why that resonated with me. It's because, you watch that as a little kid and you're like, I thought there were going to be dragons and wizards and sword fights and all this stuff. And I want to go back and watch the first 30 minutes of Fellowship of the Ring because there's no taxes. There's no bills. It's just people sitting around, having a good time, laughing. It's like, man, that really resonates. So like simpler times, would they be hard? Sure. But man, sometimes don't you ache for like those simpler times where you don't have to really worry about anything, but truly what's most important, what's going to keep you alive. You ever been super, super hungry? Like really hungry, like on the verge of the body's starting to starve. I know you have, because you did the 72 hard thing or whatever it was. You fasted for 96 hours. Some of the best meals you'll ever have. One of the best meals I ever had was during a marathon. It was a banana and a power gel. It tasted so good. It was so satisfying. And it's like, man, maybe we'd appreciate things a lot more if things got really difficult,
I absolutely think we would. Who said it? We we esteem too lightly those things, that are gained too easy. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, I jacked it up, but I think you appreciate things you have to work for, and you have to sacrifice for, and two, you appreciate things being less complex. We all like things that are less complicated. At least I do. I don't like things that are complicated. I hate when things get overcomplicated. When your main source of entertainment, is as a kid, one of the things is, sitting around listening to, there's not an electronic, not a TV on. And it was my dad and, my uncle sitting around, one of my great uncles sitting around talking about war stories, from Vietnam and Korea, and they just, sit around. It's like front porches. Some of the best times is just hanging out on the front porch, man, just chatting. Somebody breaks out. Yeah, every once in a while, somebody might break out a musical instrument, or something. But Easy, simple life, simple living.
So I was, that triggered something, and my brain went like, I had to, when I came to the final conclusion, I had to do the where's the source of that? I had to retrace the source of where that came from, because it started when you were talking about sitting on the porch listening to the adults talk, because there was literally nothing else to do. You're over at your friend's parents' house, they don't have kids or whatever, and they don't even have National Geographic magazine. They don't have anything you can even look at. And even if they did, you're not going to go over and touch it. Are you crazy? No,
Yeah, no.
You're gonna sit over here, and you're gonna be quiet. And I started thinking, truly bored. It's like truly bored, where there's nothing to do but occupy. And God forbid you're alone. If you're alone in that situation, hopefully there were some other kids around. You go outside and invent things to do. But hate to do the kids these days thing, but like they've got phones, they got like everything, right? They've got all these things, and it makes you wonder. You go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you talk about the board not be able to do anything. When I was in middle school, I think it was my eighth grade year, we drove from Tallahassee to Oceanside, California, to see my uncle when he was stationed in the Marine Corps out at Camp Pendleton. And so, bro, this is, let's see, I was eighth grade. Like, this is, again, yeah, so this is late 80s. I forget what year. It was right before Desert Storm kicked off, so 90. And I took a couple of books to read, and for the car ride all the way, across the country on I-10. And I think I finished my books by like Beaumont. And so from there, from Beaumont, to the Pacific Ocean, I got really familiar with the Rand McNally map book, that dad always had with him. And that was it. That was, so of course we had the family car. So I have my two sisters in the car, but sisters aren't fun when you're that age. You're just like, get away from me. Don't touch me. Your leg touch me, or dad, I'm hungry, and you weren't stopping. Like that car wasn't stopping unless either mom had to go to the bathroom or dad needed fuel. That's it. So, you just sat there and just leaned your head up against the window, staring out the window for, hours and hours and hours upon end, especially going across West Texas.
One of the cruelest things my parents ever did, and I don't think they intended it to be cruel, but it was. Because when you're taking those long trips, now we never took a trip that long, but we would take, 8 to 10 hour car rides. That was a normal thing. Going down to San Antonio, maybe Austin. We went to California once from Arizona. So yeah, we had some long car rides. So you invent things to do. The license plate game. We were really into that. But you invent things to do. And when you're going along those interstates and stuff, what's a lot of times what's near an interstate? Trains. Interstates or highway, trains.
Yep.
So my parents told us, I don't know why they told us this. I don't know if I doubt you've ever heard this. Don't count the cars because that's unlucky. I'm like,
Never
what?
heard that.
No, but I believed it because I was, 8 years old. I was like, oh, we can't be unlucky. You don't walk under a ladder. That's unlucky.
Yeah.
So it's like we didn't count them. We would stop ourselves from counting them. And it's like they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have told us it was unlucky. That was an activity we could have been doing.
That was hilarious. That's like so my wife told our kids when they were really young that the ice cream truck only plays music when it's out of ice cream.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's kind of mean.
So the ice cream truck would come through our neighborhood when they were kids, and they hear the music, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's out of ice cream."
So going down that road about being bored, right? And your kids are to be seen, not heard. You're going to be quiet. You probably explored your own mind quite a bit. Probably invented, a lot of legends in your own mind. Thought about the wrestling matches. Obsessed. It's probably why you can still remember a lot of those wrestlers from back then, because you had time to think about it. Right? Yeah. You had time to think about your hobbies and things like, or your interests at least. So where I was going, as you were talking, I started thinking about boredom, and I started thinking about, Tim Walz's kid came into my head, and a conversation I had with my wife, because Tim Walz's kid is neurodivergent. When I first saw him, I didn't know that. I mean, he looked like a retard, but I didn't know he was one. You don't call retards retarded. You'd never do that.
That's
No,
me.
you don't call retarded people retards. You don't do that. That's crossing the line. But he reminded me of that part in Old School when I first saw the clip of Will Ferrell, at the wedding part where his dad is giving a speech or whatever. Love you, Dad. That's what it reminded me of. I thought that was funny. I think I tweeted that out, or no, I messaged you guys that. And then I found out he's actually disabled. Neurodivergent is what they call it. And I was like, okay, well, off limits. That's not cool. He's a goofy kid, whatever. But I was thinking, okay, well, so what's this neurodivergent stuff? It's ADHD. He has ADHD, and he's probably a tad on the spectrum. So I was thinking about, well, what do you do with a kid in 1982 who's neurodivergent ADHD? First of all, there weren't that many of them. Now they're everywhere. So tying this back to RFK Jr., talking in his speech today, he talked a lot about processed foods. He stayed away from the vaccines, but he talked a lot about processed foods, the rates of obesity, things like that. And as my wife and I think we were talking the other day, we were either driving or walking somewhere, and we started talking about the rates of autism and the rates of, neurodivergence and things like that. And dude, I know we've talked about it on the podcast before. Maybe you've had some revelations since then, or maybe just talk about it again. What exactly is going on? Now, what I said to Michelle was, you look at the things that have changed since I was in grade school. What's changed? Processed foods have changed for sure. A lot more processed foods. Also plastics. Plastics are pervasive now. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Vaccines, I don't know. I don't know if there's more vaccines. I remember when I was in elementary school getting vaccines. I got a few vaccines. I don't remember what for, but I did get vaccines for the big stuff like MMR, things like that.
Yeah.
So if you had to theorize, like what has happened, like if you had to pin it on something, where would you start? The rates of autism.
I would start with the things that exactly what you just laid out. So just a quick one, right? So CDC is looking at, in the year 2000, per 1,000 children, 6.7 per 1,000 children had autism, or they were somewhere on the autism spectrum, right? So whether they're, neurodivergent, whatever it is, right? But they are on, as we say, on the spectrum. That's 6.7. You know what it was for 2020 per 1,000? 27.6. And I would imagine if you go back, to what year the food pyramid come out, or when processed food really started getting heavy, when they were like, when they were like seed oils, no more, no more butter, margarine is bad for you. Margarine's going to kill you. This, that, and the other is going to kill you. And processed foods really, really took off. Right. So I think, and I'm talking on my ass kind of right here, I think processed foods really probably started taking off in the 80s. That's, because they definitely weren't around back when our parents were kids. Not like this.
Yeah. I think it would be, because again, like this is another thing Joe Rogan always talks about is the food pyramid stuff and the sugar. So the sugar, there was an actual sugar lobby that ended up in the 1970s that ended up paying, and not much, to a group of researchers to basically cook the books and say that sugar is good, fat makes you fat. Like you need to cut down on the animal fats, you need to cut down on these things, and it's all fat's fault. Fat is what's clogging your arteries. Fat is what is killing people. So starting in the 1970s, sugar started being injected into everything, and I think that it was just a natural shift to overall processed foods. A lot of people say, I don't know if how much proof there is of this, that a lot of these processed foods are actually addictive. And it all boils down to an insulin sugar rush. But yeah, I would processed foods. We've talked about processed foods a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, like, that's one thing I've tried, and and so is the wife. Like, we really tried. When they say like stay out of the center of the grocery store, stay on the perimeter. All right, so tried that. But even when you start looking at, and man, for as many faults as it has, Netflix, man, when they do some of these documentaries, especially on the food industry, damn, dude, it makes me not want to even buy, things on the periphery of the grocery store. Um, especially like your meat. They're like, oh, that chicken, yeah, the chicken that you got, yeah, it's washed in chlorine. Baby carrots that you buy at the grocery store, those are washed in chlorine before they're bagged. They're like, if you're going to buy carrots at the grocery store, buy regular organic, whole carrots, and then go home and pull the knife out of the drawer and chop them up your damn self. Um, but you take a look at especially sugar and artificial sweeteners and stuff. When did Alzheimer's come on the scene? Alzheimer's was first diagnosed what, early 2000s, I think, maybe early 2000s. I would guess, kind of like it was like, hey, this is Alzheimer's. Before it was dementia or whatever it was called. And it was Alzheimer's, and they're like, well, we just don't know where this came from. This is just well, people always had this. We just didn't know what it was called. And it's like, no, like this is new. This hasn't been around forever. And they come to find out, well, it's type 3 diabetes. That's what it is. Even the Mayo Clinic is like, oh yeah, that's type 3 diabetes. And so, well, why did that just start now? Why now? It's because of our food. The stuff they put in our food I don't want to belabor, because we talked about it before, but yeah, man, I've gotten to where I couldn't tell you the last time I had a bowl of cereal. And dude, I love cereal. Honey Bunches of Oats, dude, love it. I couldn't tell you the last time I had a bowl of cereal. Because it's one of those things. I bought some packs of tuna, because I'm just trying to find cheaper replacements for powdered protein. Because, god damn, man, powdered protein is expensive,
and it doesn't
everything
work.
is. For me, I've had good success with it. I know you have it. But like, powdered protein, man, but it's expensive. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go. You know what? Replace it. I'll get some chicken, some canned chicken, tuna, stuff like that. And this tuna was like, oh, it's fresh caught, not anything. But I'm looking at it, and it's like this has the lowest mercury level of any tuna. And I was like, well, why?
What a thing to say.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's like, if that's your big advertisement, it's like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put this back on the shelf. I'm not going to get it's got the lowest mercury. How about zero? Let's get some tuna with zero mercury in it.
At least mercury, though, is on the periodic table, right? At least that's not a compound.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it wasn't made, in somebody's lab.
Like monosodium triglyphosate. It's like, what?
Or red dye number 5.
Yeah, dude, the cereal thing, you said that I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, we should talk about this on the podcast. The cereal thing, maybe you don't eat it because it's bad for you. But one of my favorite things for years was Kraft macaroni and cheese out of the box. I'd either put a can of chicken in there or a pound of ground beef. I'd make up my mac and cheese, and I just put that chicken in there, got ground beef in there. Josh, I choose not to eat it anymore because it makes me feel like garbage. I feel awful. And it's that process. It's those processed noodles, and it's whatever cheese that cheese. It just, I could eat it, but I choose not to because it makes me feel so crappy. And what I was thinking about on the road the other day, when I say on the road, I was probably driving between the gym and my house, but I was like, I miss the days when I could eat fast food and not feel it. Stop by, get yourself a Taco Bell, get yourself a Taco Villa, get yourself a, Popeyes or even Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. I mean, it tastes so good, but my body can process it. It just has a hard time. I just feel run down. You know,
Yeah.
don't you miss the days where you could just, like at Bragg, where we could just go and eat some fast food 3 times a day?
Dude, I was, I was like a little mini CT Fletcher when I was in high school because it was nothing to go to lunch, go run to McDonald's or Burger King, wolf down a Whopper, a large fry, and a large Coke, and then go to baseball practice and like not miss a beat. I remember my soccer coach my senior year yelling at me. We were actually getting ready to play for the district title, and I'm sitting there. We'd already warmed up and everything. I was just waiting for everything to to start ready, get rolling. We were getting ready to take the field and stuff. I had a big bag of salt and vinegar potato chips, and I'm just like munching on them. And my coach just looked at me. He was like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "No, coach, I'm good." He goes, "You're sitting here eating a bag of potato chips before you're getting ready to go, do physical activity." I was like, "Yeah, they're good. Have you had salt and vinegar? You want some?" Like I offer stuff like that. He's like snatches the bag away from me. He's like, "You're gonna pay for this when you're older." But it was just that thing. Dude, I was like a, and you probably were the same way. I was like a catfish, when I was younger. It just whatever. I just like, unhinge the bottom jaw and just scour, whatever was in front of me as far as food goes. But you're right. I can't do that now. Like you guys know me, man. I'm a fat kid. Like I love my grub. I love my food. I love, I got a sweet tooth. I love hamburgers. I love tacos. I love pizza, but it is legit an every once in a while thing for me because I can't every time I eat it, it's like you're right, it's like really good. And like an hour later, I'm like, I've got to go walk a couple miles
But
because I feel like, God man, I feel like I got hit by a truck.
if you're making tacos though, if you're making tacos on some good corn tortillas, you're looking at what? Beef or chicken, a little bit of cheese, lettuce, tomato, maybe some sour cream. I don't know. That's not that bad for you.
No.
That's at least what I tell myself. We do taco night at least once a week around here. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this isn't so bad.
No, where people go wrong, and by people, I mean me, go wrong with taco night is, oh yeah, we're gonna have, dude, I love corn tortillas. I'm the only person in my house that likes corn tortillas. Everybody else wants flour tortillas, which is fine. Again, it's a tortilla. It's fine. It's okay. Because your body does need carbs. And so where I go wrong is I'm like, oh, well, not only in addition to this taco, it is a little bit of beef. Always been a big, fanatic. Even when I was young, man, I was like, I gotta like you gotta strain the meat. Like you gotta strain the grease out of it. Like you cannot just throw the grease in there, with it because that's and some fresh vegetables cut up with it. But I tack on, like, get the bag of tortilla chips and the thing of salsa or guacamole, and it's like, and next thing you know, it's like I just sat here and ate half a bag of tortilla chips, with salsa. It's like that's not good because every 3 tortilla chips is basically the equivalent of a tortilla, and it's like, oh, so before I even ate my taco, I ate 23 tortillas. So it's that's where I go wrong on taco night.
Yeah. I don't know. It's good to splurge, but it's all things balance. All things balance. You were talking about, eating the bag of salt and vinegar before a game. I mean, I'll just say it again. I mean, I know we're stomping on a dead horse, but I remember my senior year in high school, swim practice was at 4:30 in the morning, and you had to be at school by 9. And, at 7:30, I would jet up to Burger King because I also had a job, dude. Now, well, I had a job, so I had my own money. So I jet up to Burger King, get 3 crisp sandwiches, 3.
Hell yeah.
Eat those things on the way to school, and just be ready to go for the rest of the day. And, lunch, whatever, dinner, whatever. It's like if I tried to do that now, it doesn't matter how much I'm working out. 3 crisp sandwiches a day, 5 times. Are you just that alone? would put me over the top, dude. It's oh man, but it's not a death sentence. Eating sensibly, because I wouldn't say I eat healthy. I'd say my wife and I eat sensibly. It's not a death sentence, man. You still get good stuff,
Yeah.
But man, Josh, shopping, you talk about the center of the store, right? Maybe we're talking about this too much. The inner aisles.
Yep.
That's where the like pasta sauce, for instance, all your good pasta sauces. It's easy just to pick up that jar of pasta sauce. Maybe it's high end. Maybe it has an Italian name. But the thing is, it's in a jar. It was made at a factory somewhere, and the sugar on there is just off the charts. But the flip side of that is, well, I'll just make my own pasta sauce. Do you know how much of a pain in the butt that is?
Yeah.
To make your own stuff. I mean, it just takes time. It takes time. My wife and I work, man. I don't have time to do that. Sometimes you just gotta, bite the bullet and use that jarred pasta sauce.
Yeah. So my wife's grandmother, long before she passed, she showed me how to make homemade noodles. And so, she was like, all right, let's go. She was awesome. And so she showed me how to make homemade noodles. And, so she stood there and, coached me through it and everything. And we had them. They were great. And, but like you said, it's like that, it was like a 2.5 hour dinner prep. And I was like, I don't have 2.5 hours. But maybe when I'm retired, like, yeah, okay. But I don't have 2.5 hours to, prep for dinner. And my wife doesn't have 2.5 hours to prep for dinner. Right. It's like, we got 3 teenagers, people got jobs, like it's just like, it's not in the realm of possibility. Unless you're meal prepping, and that's your, that's all day, that's your day on Sunday, it's all meal prep for the week. And again, man, you got life going on, and life happening, but you're right. It's just, it's a do it sensibly thing. I like ice cream. I'm a big ice cream guy. I don't eat ice cream every night. There's a reason for that. It's a every once in a while thing. Like, we went to the beach a couple times this summer, and, it's like, hey man, we're at the beach. All right. Hey, let's go get snow cones. All right. Hey, let's go. All right. Everybody's winding down for the night. Let's go run down the street and grab some ice cream. Then back here at home, it's like they make this, I don't know what it's called. Ninja makes it, but it's basically like, you can take anything, put it in this little, Jimmy Jammy, and freeze it overnight, then put it in here, and it will churn it. You add a couple things, and it will make your ice cream for you, and you can do it. So I did it the other day. I used a protein shake and poured it in there, put some peanut butter chips in there with it, and made chocolate ice cream with peanut butter chips. And it was a protein shake. And so it's like, okay, maybe this is the new thing. I don't know. We'll see.
I just saw a Twix. I'm going to take this off the rails. This person said, they introduced it very, very professionally. They're like, I have put in 7,000 plus hours researching the Crusades. A thread below shows some of my unique thoughts and conclusions from the Crusades. So I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. So I click on the thread, and there's one picture, and it said they didn't go far enough. That was the thread.
Lord.
Oh,
man. Hilarious. I started to have this conversation with somebody the other day, especially with everything that's going on in the UK. There's going to have to be a second crusade, a second crusade. There's going to have to be a modern day crusade at some point. Because when you look at what's going on in the UK, man, it's chippy. It's really, really chippy. All those years of open borders and, letting anybody and everybody in, and then allowing them to, not assimilate, right? That's the biggest thing. You can be a country and you can bring in immigrants, But if you don't make them assimilate, it's going to go badly. And, everybody needs to take a look at what's going on in the UK right now. And that's exactly what's going to happen. When you have thousands of military age males who are, hardline Islamists, and you're allowing them to run free and do their own thing and, establish their own version of Sharia law, it's not going to go well for you. Right. And that is from experience from all of us firsthand. That always ends badly. When they try and overlay that in a Western society, it always goes badly. So no, I concur though. The Crusades didn't go far enough.
It is an interesting demographic shift. I don't see that there's a coming. I'm not going to say I don't see there's a coming back from this, but when you say make them assimilate, that's not a gun to the head, learn English, adopt our values. It's not that.
No.
What you're doing is setting conditions that you're setting conditions for success that require assimilation. And that's how it's been for a very long time, almost everywhere. But now those conditions are being removed. They're not even being set. They're just being removed. It's like, no, they should keep their language, they should keep their culture because diversity is our strength. It's like, kind of. But the kind of diversity you're talking about is not our strength. That's not what it is.
No. No, not at all. And yeah, it's definitely not it's not a gun to the head thing. It's like, but hey, when you get here, you can come here. But when you get here, like these are the rules, right? These are the social norms, and these are the rules that generally everybody has agreed upon for the most part, right? And you don't get to come in and you don't get to establish your own thing. And because you don't get to come in and say, well, it's like, so the UK did not charge. So an immigrant raped a woman. They let him go. They did not charge him because he was like, well, I didn't know rape was wrong. Because where I come from, rape is not illegal. And so it's like, okay, well, they let this dude go because he was like, well, I didn't know it was wrong. And you're like, okay, that's assimilate, right? It's like, no, you just can't show up and do whatever you want because where you came from, it was legal, right? This is, these are the social norms and standards and laws that we have here, and you have to abide by them or you just can't be here. It's really wild. And the UK is, poised to pass a law, anti-blasphemy against Islam. And you're like, really? Like, they are putting people in jail for memes. We all make the joke, like, the year is 2030 and, you're before the, court explaining why you shared a meme on, Facebook in, 2019 that now violates, a number of, international laws and norms and blah, 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 blah. And everybody laughs at it. And it's like, that's happening right now in the United Kingdom. This dude got sentenced to 18 months in jail for an anti-Islamic meme. Didn't call for violence, just, something along the lines of, Muhammad likes little boys or whatever. Right. And it was like, you guys are putting people in jail for that. Ooh. And for whatever reason, I thought there was going to be that spark in Northern Ireland, when they Molotov cocktailed that police car. I was like, oh, here we go. Like, IRA's back, baby. Right. We're about to, it's about to be on again. The Protestants and the Catholics are about to team up. And then it just kind of fizzled out. And it's like, man, you guys really suck. You guys are getting it pushed in left, every which way. And you guys aren't doing anything.
But why?
That's crazy.
The reason they're not is what we were talking about earlier. The reason nobody wants to really do anything. And this comes down to the three of us who do this podcast. The reason we don't do anything, it's the same reason they're not doing anything. When we're truly outraged, like how outraged am I going to have to get to give up what I've got now? And that goes for the two of you guys too. It's like we've got a lot. We've got a lot to lose.
Yeah.
You know, when you've got a lot to lose, and this boils down to the Joe Sixpack will put up with anything as long as he's got those things that we always mention, right?
Yep.
Wi-Fi, climate control, and food in his belly. But then you expand that to things that truly make you comfortable. It's like now you've got even more to lose, and it's just they've got too much to lose. So they don't stick by it. Like the immigrants who are in the streets over there, hacking people with machete, they don't have much to lose. All they have to lose is, so what? I'm going to get sent back to my country where it sucks anyway. They don't have much to lose. It's all about comfort and not wanting to give that up. You said it earlier. It's the same thing. It's like how outraged do you have to get? And it goes back to what I was saying last episode. It's like if we were talking about the Olympics, right? I'm outraged. It's like, well, if you're outraged about everything, that kind of waters down your overall level of outrage. Like what's it going to take for you to show up at City Hall with a pitchfork? You know what I'm saying? It'd take a lot.
Yeah.
It would take a lot. It's like, what's that point? And it's, again, it's the frog in the boiling, in the water, turning up the heat thing. It's like, boy, by the time I get worked up enough, it's going to be too late. I don't know. I hear price controls. I hear taxing unrealized gains. And I start thinking, wow, if it gets to that point, it's going to be too late. So, I mean, we don't have much of a choice other than to vote. And, I think, Josh, you and Roger live in states where it actually matters to vote, I believe. In Texas, I was having this conversation with Darren. He was like, well, good thing my vote doesn't count. I was giving him a hard time about voting for Perot back in 1992.
I got a chart.
And he reminded me, it's like, look, man, Texas went to H.W. Bush for this amount. It really doesn't matter. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, not for the president, at least. But
yeah,
you guys live in a state. I guess that's all you can really do all we can really do other than to, do what you're doing, which is get involved locally, Chairman Brown. But it's just tough, It's tough. And those Irish people, back to your point, it's like they're just not worked up enough yet. They just haven't reached that tipping point yet. And by the time they do, it'll be too late.
I think it may already be too late for the UK, honestly. Like, I mean, they're legit. Like, it's not a joke. It's not this. But I mean, people are getting hacked up in the streets, and when they push back, like, they're getting put in jail. And they're getting put in jail for social media posts mocking. Remember, so with the UK police and the various cities and stuff, they're like, we're going after all these people that are fomenting unrest, and then everybody, we did it. We did it too. Jumped on their X pages or whatever. It was like, you guys saw, Tyree, whatever, right? And they either locked their accounts or this, that, and the other. And it's just, dude, when you're going to jail for posting a meme, I think it's too late. At that point, it really is time. Okay, you need to but like you said, you got to they got a lot to lose. I do think. And here's the thing on, the whole price control, and unrealized gains tax is Democrats have never done that in the past. They've talked about it. And I'm not saying that if elected, Kamala and Tim won't do it, because they are extreme. They are radicals, even by the left standards. But it's one of those things that will have a passage of taxing unrealized gains. That's an immediate effect. That is an immediate effect. You will have, you'll have the Elon Musk. You'll have Warren Buffett. You will have folks who will pull out of the stock market. I think in a big enough way, you're gonna have a lot of other investors that are gonna pull out of the stock market, with the unrealized gains thing, and then you implement, let's say it's all at once, right? And price controls on top of that. I think you put the economy. I think the economy gets bad enough at that point that people won't have a lot, when it comes to losing stuff, at least as far as food goes, because that's going to have a fairly immediate, significant economic impact, and not in a good way. I don't think honestly, I think the Democrat Party, will talk them off the ledge if they're elected and they want to talk about that, because dude, they've had the power to do it before and they haven't done it because they know what that will do overnight. They know.
Well, BlackRock would fold. It's like, okay, if you're talking about BlackRock folding, it's like there's a reason. I tend to think it's not going to happen.
Yeah, same.
It's too catastrophic.
Yep.
It's too much. Okay, so folks, certainly most people understand, but unrealized capital gains. It's as simple as this. It's like I've got a couple 401ks out there. I've got my own private investments, and I've invested in a stock, for instance. I paid let's say $1,500, right? Now that stock has risen to, let's say, 2,000. I got really lucky. In the past year, that stock has risen to 2,000. Well, as we all know, I'm going to keep that money in that stock because, I'm making money on it, right? Money that I haven't realized yet because I haven't cashed it in. Well, the unrealized financial or unrealized capital gains is they're going to tax me on that 500 I've made at a certain percentage, whether it's 17% or 28% or whatever that is. That's a very micro level, but that's what we're talking about. You're talking about a 401k with hundreds of thousands or maybe million or so dollars in it. You haven't cashed it in yet, but it's gained this much. You're going to have to pay tax on what you haven't cashed in yet. Same thing with a house. Think about your house, Josh. This is why I said to you and Roger in particular, it's like if this thing went through, it would literally wreck you. It would wreck you. You couldn't recover from it, because I know with Roger's house, your house, I'm pretty sure, has appreciated quite a bit since you've lived in it. Roger's house is off the freaking charts.
Oh yeah.
So with that's an unrealized capital gain. You haven't sold your house yet. So you're going to be taxed. Like if your like this house I'm in right now is ridiculous. It's gone up so much, and it's not worth what they're saying it is. What the state or the county actually is saying it is. They're saying it's worth, $100,000 more than we paid for it. Now 125. 3 years after we bought it. Now I got to pay tax on that. It's like I literally cannot do that, and that's everybody here in this town I live in. It would break the back. And the fact, Josh, that they're even talking about it, and people on X are just like, oh no, it's not that bad. It's only for people who are,
it's only for the rich.
Have 400,000, the ultra rich. And it's like, okay, so there's all kinds of games we can play with the 400,000. Is that like how much you're worth? Right. Because there's a lot of people who are worth 400,000, but live almost paycheck to paycheck while putting money in 401k and savings and stuff like that. They by no means live rich. They drive Toyota RAV4s and live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,300 square foot house. Not huge. Yeah. So it's like these things have a way of amoebaing out to affect everyone. And even if it's like, oh, Luke, you care about the ultra rich, it's like you can't even do this to the ultra rich. You can't do this. Because even if you start doing this with the ultra rich, Josh, what happens when you start corporate tax rate? What happens if you raise it to 28% from 22? You think they're just going to eat that?
To the consumer.
That's right. Now, I've been talking way too much, man. You go ahead.
No. You're on a roll. It gets passed on to the consumer. And it's as simple as that. And so our house, I was walking the dog this morning before the incident. And there's a house on our street that had a coming soon for sale sign on it. And so I was like, oh, I have to mention that to the wife, because we're always looking at houses selling in our neighborhood, and we live near a big military base, and so it's a transient area. And so I was like, oh, I'll mention that later. When she wakes up. Well, she sent it to me. She had seen it, and she was like, oh, look, hey, this house is for sale. That house is for sale for almost double for what we paid for our house. It's the same floor plan, same everything. It's now on the market for almost double of what we paid for ours. And it's like, this is crazy. Like, there's no way our house has doubled in value realistically in 5 years. That's crazy. That's insane. And so, yeah, and the county will come back and they will take a look and say, okay, well, we estimate your house now to be double of what it was worth. Now you have to pay tax on that. And it's exactly what we're talking about. It's like, well, but I haven't made any money off this thing because I haven't sold it. Like you're saying, the scary part, like you said, the fact that one, they're talking about it, and two, the fact that so many people support it, not realizing the catastrophic event that will occur immediately after that is signed into law. But people will support it, and it's like, are you stupid? And dude, and the price, we talked last episode, so I'll belabor it, but the price caps, it's like, are you a Marxist? Because that's what that is. But there's no other way around it. And people are like, no, it's not. And the whole it won't affect Biden's tax hikes. Well, it won't affect anybody making less than $400,000 a year. It's like, well, in 1913 when they came out with the with the income tax, what they said? This is to soak the rich. This is no. This isn't for poor people. This is the rich. It's like, now where are we at today? Right, that 400,000, that was a lie. That was 100% lie because my taxes went up and I don't make 400K a year. So yeah, the people buying all this stuff, crazy.
What's the rich? What is that? That's always what they get you. It's like, tax the rich. Well, in some people's eyes, I'm rich.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't feel that way, but whatever. I'll tell you this. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's crazy. It goes back to that, what we were talking about, having, like pretty good. It's like, do you realize when hot showers were invented? Like, it's been probably less than 100 years. Hot showers, right? And so, like, we're like, and people, especially people in the West, and I'm not saying there's people, out there, everybody out there doing really well. Like, there are definitely some people who are on the struggle bus, in the Western world, and even in the US. But man, by and large, you are still living way above the rest of the world.
See, and here's where we're in trouble. What's the national debt right now? It's like 28 trillion, something like that.
Oh, dude, I thought it was like 32 or something.
Maybe it's 32 trillion. Here's where we're in trouble. Let's say that they did. Let's like, you know what? We have to do this. We have to, get the national debt under control. And the only way to do it is to tax unrealized capital gains. But we're only going to do it for 401ks. Y'all are just going to have to suck it up for the future 3 generations. Here's where we're in trouble. I just chat GPT'd this. Chat GPT is fairly accurate. It's better than Wikipedia. As of recent estimates, the total amount of money invested in 401k retirement plans in the United States is approximately $7.3 trillion. $7.3 trillion. That's just what's invested. Okay, so if you take unrealized gains, you're looking at maybe what, 3 trillion, 2 trillion, maybe. Like two is probably generous. So it's like, even if you got all that money out of the American people who have unrealized capital gains in 401ks, you're not even going to make a dent in the national debt. You cannot tax your way out of this. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And if you did it with all housing, you're still going to barely make it 7.3 trillion compared to 32 trillion. Unreal.
So I just looked. The national debt is 35 trillion.
Oh my God.
All right. So it's 35 trillion. In FY 2023, the federal government spent $6.13 trillion in FY 2023. In let's see, I was trying to find out how much it brought in that year, but the 6.1 trillion was a deficit, so they didn't even bring in 6.1 trillion. So yeah, you could tax all that, you could bring it in, you're basically you're going to break even. Now, like the
Trillion.
the billionaire thing, right? Because everybody wants to talk about let's tax the billionaires, right? Let's have a wealth tax, because the billionaires make all this money, and when you take a look at the net worth of all the billionaires who live in the United States, they have a combined net worth. The 400 richest people in the United States have a combined net worth of $4 trillion. You could take every single penny from the 400 richest people in the United States, which includes a number of billionaires, and you would not be able to fund the federal government for 1 year. And that's taxing them 100%, taking everything of value they own. You couldn't fund the federal government for 1 year. Nobody wants to talk about spending. Nobody wants to talk about spending. It's all about, people need to pay their fair share. Corporations getting away without tax, this, that, and the other. It's like, bro, I passed the first grade amazingly. And I figured out that, hey, man, if you spend more than you take in, you're always going to be in a deficit. Like it's truly simple math.
I really don't see any other way out of this than a cataclysm. Yeah, when I say cataclysm, I don't mean the end of times or anything, but like something really serious. And I
depression.
Yeah, maybe worse. I mean, because the depression
or worse, yeah.
What's the worst war is World War II for sure, and World War II set the stage for the U.S. to really, get a leg up and become the powerhouse it was until like maybe the 1990s. I just don't see any other way out of this other than, some cataclysmic event, some sort of conflict, because we're living high on the hog right now, and we'll probably continue to live high on the hog for a while continuing to rack up these. People don't understand what these. I don't even quite grasp what a trillion, what the number 1 trillion is. I think I saw something one time where if you stacked $1 bills on top of each other, how many would you need to get to the moon? Just stacking them. And it's like 1 trillion or something like that. It's like, damn. So you could go to the moon and back like 16 times on the amount, it's unfathomable. It's not a cheery thing. And I feel bad that we've gotten to this point, but it really has to do with, I think, handouts, man. Well,
I mean, what are the two biggest drivers of debt in the United States?
Social services and what?
Yeah, it's Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security.
Yeah,
it's two biggest drivers of debt. But anytime any politician says, "Hey, we really need to look at reforming these," and we have to, dude, they're vilified immediately. They are vilified, and they're going to take Gam's Social Security check away, and she's not going to be able to get her her government cheese. I mean, they're vilified immediately, and it's like, hey, dude, you can not reform them if you want to, but like, so when they reformed the military retirement system, there was immediate visceral pushback. It was like, oh my God, no. And it was one of those things. It was like, but once they said, okay, hey, people coming in now or people coming in a year from now, that's who, starts under the new system. Not everybody who's already, into it, right? You're already grandfathered in. So, but it's you. And at the end of the day, I think it is a better system. when you look at, the sustainability. Um, and if you want to sustain Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, you have to. You have to
Yeah.
reform it. It cannot. It is not sustainable in its current form.
Yeah, I agree. Man. So the wife is giving me the look, Josh. She's giving me the look that we don't need to go 3 hours tonight. So,
So I was that. Well, that you know what? That's unfortunate because I had a philosophical thing to bring up, but we'll save
let's
it
do it.
for.
Let's do it. No.
No. We'll save it for later. We're at 2 hours right now too. So Roger's gonna send us hate mail that we went over, and now he can't post it on Rumble.
I wish you would have thrown that philosophical thing out there when I was talking about, being able to eat 3 crust sandwiches back in the day, because nobody really gives a shit about that. Oh man. Well, I'll let you close it out, man. Yeah, shout outs to the usual suspects. Appreciate y'all listening. Gary, appreciate you listening. Ryan, all the Ryans that listen. I've thrown Darren under the bus a couple times tonight. Sorry, buddy. And Russell and Kurt and all y'all. And Rodney, of course. Rodney's always giving me crap. Rodney's the one keeping me on schedule, at least, Josh, about recording. It's like, when do y'all come down for another one? And Josh, Rodney has listened to all of them. He told me that the other night, and I was like, dude, I'm sorry you had to listen to those first 10, man. It was really bad. He's like, no, man, y'all have come a long way. But yeah, everybody's listening. Chris and all the Chris's, actually. Appreciate y'all listening. Appreciate y'all bearing with us. And yeah, we got an interesting election season. We got a lot of episodes to go till then. Really looking forward to it. And I'll kick it to Josh to close us out.
Yeah. So found out a buddy of mine listens. I didn't know he did. We were, I had talked to him like face to face in a while, and got to catch up with him this past week over lunch. And so, Jason, thanks for listening, man. And everybody else out there, Rodney up in Alaska, the other Jason, in Mississippi now, Wes, Smitty, Big Game, Jer, he does listen. Maybe not to all of them, but he does try and catch them. And I know I'm leaving somebody else, somebody out, and I apologize. But until next time, everybody be good, and get your, get a hold of your family members and your friends. Tell them to get out. Tell them to vote for Trump. No price caps, and no tax on unrealized gains. And I'm going to repost, the Snowdrop 55. That's the ultra that Luke and I are doing, along with a buddy of ours, and who's dragging his son out as well to do it. I'm going to repost it up so you can you can take a look at it, learn about it, and if you are so inclined, donate. Even if you don't donate, and our names donate, it's for it's support childhood cancer and fight that. So it is a noble cause, 100% for sure. And then for those who listen, if you're so inclined and you want to spend your New Year's sitting in a chair, drinking some bourbon and heckling us as we punish ourselves, then you're more than welcome, because we're going to work it out, because C3 has gone, man. We are going into the stratosphere. We're going to the moon. We got some high speed technology now. We got some mics, some little clip-on mics that are studio quality that we can do a lot of stuff from anywhere now. So I'm sure there'll be some live streaming and some recording while we're punishing ourselves, walking in circles later on at the end of the year. So until then, take it easy, stay frosty, and go find some good bourbon to drink and fill those Canteen cups up and keep them secured.